You're not self-aware, you're stuck, and you keep calling it self-awareness because it sounds productive instead of paralyzing. Self-awareness is supposed to create movement. What you've created is a holding cell. Before you nod along proudly and think, "At least I know my patterns," do the ritual. Like the video, subscribe, comment something like, "Okay, wow." Share it with someone who can explain their problems perfectly and still hasn't moved an inch. There. Now we can talk honestly. You know your patterns. You know your triggers. You know your attachment style. You know where it came from. And none of that has changed what you actually do. So the question isn't whether you're insightful, it's whether insight is doing anything for you. Right now, it's not. It's keeping you still. Self-awareness becomes a trap when it replaces action instead of informing it. You don't lack understanding, you lack permission. Permission to act imperfectly, permission to move without certainty, permission to choose without fully resolving your past. Instead, you explain yourself into immobility. You narrate your patterns like a documentary. You analyze your behavior from a distance. You understand yourself so thoroughly that you never have to risk being surprised. And surprise is dangerous when control is your primary coping strategy. Self-awareness feels safe. Action feels exposed, because action creates evidence, and evidence can contradict the story you tell about yourself. So you stay in theory. You say things like, "I know I'm avoidant. I know this comes from childhood. I know why I react like that. I'm working on it." And working on it becomes an indefinite state. Not because you're lazy, because working on it doesn't require you to change anything yet. Self-awareness gives you language, stuckness gives you justification, and together they create the illusion of progress. You feel like you're doing something because you're constantly reflecting, but reflection without movement is rumination with better branding. Self-awareness creates discomfort that leads to action. Being stuck creates comfort that feels like wisdom. When you're truly self-aware, you notice something and feel compelled to respond differently. When you're stuck, you notice something and use it to explain why you can't. You turn insight into absolution. If you can explain it, you don't have to confront it. That's the trap. You're not using self-awareness as a tool. You're using it as a shield against expectation, a shield against accountability, a shield against the terrifying possibility that knowing better means doing better, because doing better would require you to risk failing in real time, and failing with awareness feels worse than failing without it. If you mess up now, you can't say you didn't know. You knew, and you did it anyway. That's a different kind of shame, so you stay in analysis, because analysis keeps you morally clean. You're not irresponsible, you're reflective, you're not passive, you're processing, you're not afraid, you're healing. Those words soften the truth. The truth is, you're postponing movement because movement feels dangerous. At some point, awareness became a survival skill. You learned that understanding people kept you safe, reading the room, anticipating reactions, explaining behavior. You became perceptive instead of expressive, insightful instead of assertive. Self-awareness helped you adapt. It helped you survive. Now that same skill is working against you because awareness without agency becomes paralysis. You see every angle, every implication, every possible outcome. So you don't move. You wait for certainty. You wait for emotional readiness. You wait for clarity. But clarity doesn't come before movement. It comes from it. And because you don't move, you stay stuck in loops, analyzing the same patterns, naming the same issues, understanding the same dynamics. It feels deep. It feels intelligent. It feels responsible. It's circular. You don't need more insight. You need friction. Friction between what you know and what you do. But friction creates heat, and heat feels like exposure. You'd rather be correct than uncomfortable. You can explain your behavior better than you can tolerate it. You know why you overthink, but you still overthink. You know why you avoid, but you still avoid. And instead of urgency, you feel resignation. Well, That's just how I am. Self-awareness says, this is how I learned to be. Stuckness says, this is how I am. That difference matters, because one implies change, the other implies identity. You've turned patterns into personality traits. You don't say you learned avoidance. You say you are avoidant. Identity feels fixed, so you stop trying. That's not self-acceptance, it's self-freezing. Real self-awareness creates space. You've collapsed it. You wear insight like a badge, like proof that you're evolved. But insight without risk is decoration. Being self-aware has become part of your identity. You're the reflective one, the introspective one, the emotionally intelligent one. That identity feels safe, and change would threaten it. Because what happens if you act clumsily? What happens if you make mistakes? What happens if you behave inconsistently while knowing better? You'd lose the moral high ground, so you stay articulate instead of active. You explain fear instead of feeling it. You analyze blocks instead of stepping into them. Awareness alone doesn't build confidence. Action does. You don't trust yourself because you haven't given yourself evidence. You haven't acted differently, so the loop continues. Your awareness is backward-looking. You explain the past instead of choosing the present. Understanding becomes permission to stay the same. That's not healing, that's accommodation. You use insight to avoid being judged. If you name your flaws first, no one else can. Self-awareness becomes defense. Defense neutralizes growth. You've become unchallengeable and unchangeable. Insight is armor, and armor is heavy. It protects you. It also isolates you. Real self-awareness destabilizes. It demands response. If your awareness makes you feel settled or justified, you're not growing, you're entrenching. Understanding gives dopamine. Action requires courage, so you keep collecting insight. But never cash it in, because cashing it in would require risk. You're not blocked because you don't know. You're blocked because knowing replaced doing. Responsibility feels heavier than insight. It's easier to explain why you are like this than to decide what you'll do differently today. The past is safe, the present is exposed, so you stay in the past. You refine your story, but never step out of it. You envy people who act without certainty. They live. You explain. You confuse stagnation with depth. Self-awareness should reduce fear. Yours increased it, because now you see everything that could go wrong, so you freeze. Safety doesn't come from understanding everything. It comes from trusting yourself to respond. You haven't practiced responding, you've practiced analyzing. You built a narrator, not an actor. Life requires action, not perfect action, not healed action. Action anyway. Being stuck with self-awareness feels better than moving without certainty. You get to feel evolved without being exposed. But that comfort is costing you your life. Awareness is a doorway, not a destination. If your insight never costs you anything, it's not self-awareness. It's avoidance with better language, not advice, not motivation, just the difference between understanding yourself and actually choosing to move.